XHB100 asks, with all the skills you've learned over the years, which discipline would you happily pay someone else to do? Mine is anything involving paint. Yeah, mold making. I can do mold making, and I will do more of it here. I've got a mold making Ghostbusters themed mold making project I want to do this year. But mold making is a deeply rigorous and unforgiving process. And there are times when I'm willing to take it on, and other times when I'm looking at my old aging casting materials and thinking, I'm just gonna hire someone to do this, or yeah. So I definitely outsource the mold making in my life. That's definitely true. And I don't have any issues with that. I don't think there's any, I'm agnostic as to how a part gets built. Sometimes I want to build it. Sometimes that's really important to me. Sometimes it's not. And I don't know where that line is. It's different for every single kind of object. Old School asks, okay, this is funny. Old School asks, in a video where it's just you, such as your recent drawer divider build, how much time do you spend on things like setting up camera angles as you move between tools? Not a lot. Not a lot. Less than I should? I honestly feel like that is in my head. Less than I should. There are times I think I'm not giving enough coverage to you guys of the things that I'm making. And it's because I'm having so much fun making that I'm prioritizing that over the coverage of it. However, it's not like I watch the videos and think, I should have covered that a little better. But there are times when I'm looking and I'm like, we should get a better close-up. So I've been trying to listen to those more often, because really specifically, I love the highly close shots when I'm watching people's YouTube videos. Yeah, I like seeing what's going on. Yeah, less than I should. But again, my shop philosophy here is I want to be in a flow state as much as humanly possible. I mean, everybody does, and everybody's workspace is geared towards that, right? Your desk with multiple monitors, you know, however you set stuff up. And for me, that is really important. And it's also really important that, like, yeah. I mean, look, setting up the camera shots is part of my job. It's just not something I'm as good at as I am at the other things that I do. But the way in which I naturally cover the builds here when I'm shooting on my phone is a kind of an intimate process. It's an intimate process. I'm indulging in myself, and then you guys get to watch it. So part of me is like, you know, do it how you do it. That's going to be the honest thing. Hannah Proft SY5EB says, have you ever found yourself hired for a job that you felt like you did not deserve or did not have the qualifications for? How did you cope? To give the TLDR of my employment history, I spent my first 3 or 4 years here in San Francisco working in the theater industry. That caught the attention of Jamie Heineman, who had a special effects shop. I worked in commercials with him for 5 years, and then moved on. From Jamie, I became the director of R&D for a small startup toy company called Zoob, Z-O-O-B. And then I went up to Industrial Light and Magic. When I left Zoob, and it was because I was not management material and I didn't want to be management, I wanted to put my hands back on a workbench. I realized, okay, everyone I know is working up at ILM. They're on episode 1. Let me just call the shop lead over there and pester them until they bring me in. And that's precisely what happened. They brought me in, and easily for the first 3 years of my 5.5 years at ILM, yeah, for at least the first 2.5, 3 years, I felt like someone was going to come up and tap me and tell me to go home on any given day. Any given day. How did I cope with it? There was a point a couple of years in where I realized it was a process. I realized that I felt this way. Every build has an arc. Everything we do has a kind of an arc, right? And there are some easy spots, difficult spots. You kind of work through them. And what I noticed was, as I moved through a build, I always reached this spot of feeling like I had no idea if this was going to work or not at about the like 65, 70% mark. That's like of the 100% of the build. But the 65, 70% mark is where I'm like, clearly I am driving this boat into a wall. I have no idea what I'm doing. Someone's going to come over and say, it's time for you to go. And when I realized it was something that happened on every build, is one of the hard parts about having a brain is that you can know a process about yourself, and even knowing that process doesn't help you with how that process affects you emotionally. Like I can understand the things that I'm neurotic about, but that understanding doesn't necessarily help me be less neurotic. But in this case, at ILM, when I realized that I had that imposter complex at this kind of a similar point in every build, it really took the weight off. It really, really, really took the weight off. And it was like each time it showed up, it didn't feel great, but it was like, hello, here you are. Okay, we're in this part. That's really what, God, I say this so often on the live stream, but there's a Buddhist phrase, this is what's happening. And it puts you out of the past and out of the future and right here. This is what's happening. I am at my parents' house and they are driving me nuts. I am at a work event and I can't stand listening to this guy one more second. This is what's happening. These things happen. And this is what's happening has been a great boon for me in my life, specifically anticipating things like, when you go to that thing, those 3 hours, that's gonna suck. As long as I've prepared myself for stuff like that, I can much more easily make it through. I'm far afield from your original question, but yeah, that's how I coped. I figured out how it fit into my process, and I sort of let it happen and didn't take it too seriously. Martin Hooker asks, when rearranging the cave, did you find anything you forgot you had or anything you thought you had lost? Quite the opposite. I still haven't found a thing that I'm looking for. Someone should write a song about that. I was recently contacted by one of my colleagues on the RPF asking, they had sold a bunch of, a collection of a prop, and they wanted to reacquire some of that collection. And they asked me if I had extra pieces, because this is a piece that I had done a lot of work on. And I do somewhere, and I'm totally happy to send the extras of what I have to this dude, but I did not find them in the wrap-up here, which means there's a couple of other places they could be, but it's driving me kind of nuts. I am very gratified that during the whole process of packing out probably 10,000 separate objects on 104 separate shelves, 10,000, that might be a little over-exaggeration. Thousands, let's say thousands, that very little surprised me, or and that's specifically because I really do have an intimate mental picture of what was in all of those cabinets. I've described myself as a high-functioning hoarder. Last week or a couple weeks ago, we talked a lot about what happens to all this stuff when I die, and we talked about end-of-life planning and stuff like that. And whenever I need something, a couple of years ago, my wife and I were heading to, we were flying to Cape Cod, and she was like, hey, I could use some water boots. And I was like, well, there's water boots in your dive bag, which the last time I looked in my wife's dive bag was like 10 or 15 years ago. And I went into storage, found the dive bag because it was in the safety equipment section, pulled it out, opened the side pocket where the boots should be, and they were totally there. And part of me feels like sometimes in my life, I can feel like you are gathering too many things. what the hell are you doing? And when I need something and I go find it in just a minute where it's supposed to be, that's the opposite. I'm like, I'm living clean. I am sleeping the sleep of the just. I stored it somewhere for 15 years and it was right there when I needed it. That is a much more common experience in my life, that the actual mapping of what I possess and what we have here in this space and the spaces in my life is a pretty knowable, and it's not like there are big corners that are unexplored, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced Word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.